Welcome to the DiversiFlite podcast, where we spark careers in the flying taxi sector by introducing industry leaders to talented professionals from aviation's most underrepresented groups.
Something that people wouldn't be able to guess. You know, unless you read my bio, and I don't throw my retired rank around very much, most people would have no idea that I was a retired United States Air Force colonel and that I spent 25 years, right, dedicated in service to our country on active duty. Even when I retired from the Air Force and worked in literally the same office, just took the uniform off and put the suit on. It was just so amazing to kind of see the difference in the way people
Mm,
treated me.
mhm.
When I didn't have the rank on in the uniform, they'd see, I think, they perceive, okay, there's a woman in a suit. So it's like, whatever. So it's just kind of interesting because it's like such a big part of my life and background, but it's not something I visibly wear anymore. And unless someone really knows me or digs deep into my bio, I don't think it's something they would actually know.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's actually the first thing I tell people about you when I talk about you. I'm like, she's a colonel in the Air Force, by the way, because it's like, whoa, it's so cool, and you're definitely one of my sheroes. Again, like Chris said, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. So the question was, well, I guess it's sort of a statement, and then I'll follow it up with a question. I don't like it when men speak on my behalf. But I'm also coming from the perspective of a white woman. And I recognize that there were literally no Black women in the orbit of the Vertical Flight Society that I saw. And so I went hunting and digging because I wanted to have, you know, not certainly not, a token type of situation, but rather a leader in this space that has a seat at the table that we can learn from.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what led me to Sharon. And we wanted to have Sharon on the show, and she's very busy. And so I was just hoping that you could just share a little bit about who Sharon is and what she does, and whatever you can talk about as far as women in drones and what you do with women in drones.
Yeah, sure. So let's back up for a second because, when we talk about diversity, I think oftentimes we do focus on those things that are external, just like, I think that's a natural inclination. Just like when I retired from the military, people would look at me and they wouldn't see a rank, on me anymore. They would see, a white female. Typically in my case, I was in a business suit because I was an attorney. And I think that is the first thing that we think about when we think about diversity. But when I think about it, it's so much. Obviously, it's so much broader. It's those things you also can't see. Um, you know, uh, like someone's background, their belief system, their other identities, like perhaps their sexual identity and things of this nature. So but getting back to your question, about Sharon, I met Sharon really in 2019. I was still in the Air Force, but as a civilian. And I had been nominated for the Women to Watch Global Award that particular year. I actually won that award in leadership, and that's how I met Sharon because she ran, obviously, Women in Drones ran that program, and I just remember. It was affiliated with Interdrone at the time. And I knew I was going to go to that event. And I had reached out to Sharon and said, "Hey, I'm going to be there. I would love to meet you for lunch." And we sat down, and it was just such a great conversation. It was really inspirational to kind of hear her story and her background as a drone pilot and how she kind of evolved women in drones. And it continues to evolve to this day. I
Yeah.
mean, but Sharon was one of my very first clients because after I won that award, in pretty short order, I went up creating my company. I'm not going to get into all the gory details of people like, wait a minute, what? You're a business matters attorney? Why are you getting a drone award? That's not really part of your job. So it's like, okay, I'll do off duty employment. And it was like, wait, what do you mean you're going to do off duty employment for GS? I'm like, yeah, like you said, it's not part of my job. So it was a really weird journey, but Sharon was there with me from the very beginning. And, she said, hey, will you help me with this Women of Watch Global Award? You just received it. I'd love to hear your perspective. How can we improve it? And, that's kind of the way that my brain is wired. And part of my experience is like strategic planning. Especially in the military, I did a lot of that. And, so we kind of evolved the program that first year. And then, of course, COVID hit and things changed. And then this past year, we kind of grew and things changed again, because Interdrone, they pulled the plug on their event. We were relying on that. And then it went to CS and just like hugely blew up, right? Like
Yeah.
blew up in a positive, big way,
Yeah.
like unbelievable. And I think what you're going to see going forward, I don't want to do the big reveal here, but I defer to Sharon. I think you're going to see it grow even more over the next year, and I think it'll be exciting to watch. To watch, no pun intended. But this is one of many portfolios that Women in Drones has. I've been, a watcher, a fan, an advocate, cheerleader, a helper, an ambassador to Women in Drones. And I saw last year them expand from Africa as an example. The weekly meetups they have with Desi Eckstein, the Coffee Connects, which
Yep.
for a live event on a Zoom on a Tuesday after, kind of morning, early afternoon to have routinely like 30 plus people dialing in, that's pretty significant.
Mm.
And then of course, Danielle, you alluded to it, but this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, and the survey that my company P3 Tech worked on with Marlene Dial from the Diversity Development Network of Canada, or DDNC, and Sharon Women in Drones this past year. That's just another thing that you'll see more of that coming. And of course, Vertical Flight Society, through your leadership, Danielle, and Mike Hirschberg, has partnered primarily with Women in Drones. Of course, Marlene and I are, we're doing the heavy lift also behind the scenes on this thing. But Sharon put it on her website. We have our summary report out there. And it really validated what we believed was the case, that there continues to be a lack of diversity, in the drone, UAS, and AAM communities. And the really encouraging news is that the respondents, and there were like 1,082 of them, which is pretty amazing in itself. Um, they're hungry for change and they want
Yeah.
to see progress. And I think that's a great place to be right now, is at this precipice of an awareness of an issue and a desire to change. And I think that's awesome.
Uh,
Mm.
so well said. I couldn't agree more, and I just wanna, um, give you guys props, you ladies. I apologize. I wanna give you ladies props on that survey, because something, that nobody knows other than, Mike Hirschberg, is that Chris and I have been talking about this issue for, gosh, probably over a year. I don't know, I've lost track of time now, Chris, but
Yeah.
the first thing that we said was, we need to collect this data somehow. And Chris said we need to do a survey, and I was resistant to it. I was like, I think it'll be kind of hard to get people to take it. And so we were like brainstorming for months on like how we could get this data, and then boom, I see Women in Drones and P3 Tech and DDNC. Am I saying it right?
Yep.
DDNC
Yep.
doing this, and I'm like, oh my god, this is literally what we were trying to figure out how to do. So that really sealed the deal with us convincing Mike, like, we have to partner with them, because they've done this thing that Chris and I have been trying to figure out how the heck to get this data. So props to that. I mean, that is one of the most valuable things that I think that it's come out of the industry. I mean, everybody gets excited about flying taxis and drones and, renewable energy and all of this stuff, but the people are what's the most important. And you all did that, and you had an amazing turnout. And I'm not worthy. So thank you for that contribution to the industry. I think it will go down in history. That was so important.
Mhm.
Well, to
Um,
your point, Danielle, we thought about how do we encourage people to do a survey because there's such survey fatigue out there. I mean, heck, at the Air Force Academy, they survey those poor cadets to death, and people just they don't want to take surveys.
yeah.
And so incentivizing with every 50, do a random draw of gift card, and then Vertical Flight Society stepping up and saying we will fund those gift cards. I mean, that was really huge because when you think about that effort and the amount of time and energy that went in and sweat equity that went into that, that's all uncompensated, like, I know what I charge an hour. I don't need to share that publicly.
Yep.
You guys can reach me offline if you'd like to know or hire me. But I
Shane
know
cheap.
if I like calculate it out, like no kidding, what just that survey cost, not to mention the web content, the summary report, and now this full market report, which I'm still writing today. It would be pretty significant. So, thank you, Danielle and Mike, for stepping up and helping us with that financially because I do think that made a difference. Kind of encourage some people that might not have done it to fill out that survey. So, thanks again for that.
It was our honor and our pleasure to have any contribution to it. So yeah, we just support you 100%. And now I kind of want to pivot into something a little bit I guess a little bit more it's not less exciting, more exciting. It's a little bit more fun and a lighter topic is how uh how cool and personable of a person you are. So we first met for the well, we've met on Zoom a couple of times, but we finally met in person at CES. And I just have to say, I had too much fun with Dawn. We were going around the booths and we've got some pictures. We'll definitely have to post some of those. I was stressing Dawn out because I kept wandering off and she couldn't keep up with me. I've been told I'm a hummingbird because I just bounce around. But then the highlight of my trip, and I've been telling everybody this as well, was the Women to Watch in Aviation Awards, and then the reception. And I was emotional that next day. I called Mike and I said, I have never experienced something like this in all of my years in aviation, ever. Like, I've never felt so seen. I've never felt so included. And I didn't even win an award. I was just in the background watching and having fun. But
Yeah.
I mean, the people that were there, like the energy that was at that reception. Um, you want to talk a little bit about that? And we'll
I would
definitely use this moment to show some of the pictures. Just note for our post production, we'll put some pictures. But yeah, please share how that came about and
yeah.
how the CES thing came about and the reception. I'm just mind blown. It was the best event I've ever been at. So
Yeah,
talk
it was
again.
it was spectacular, and, I have to give Sharon a ton of credit for this, for particular the CES venue, because once Interdrone was not an option, it was like, "Oh, holy shnikes, what do we do now?" And, about a month or so in, she called me and said, "Hey, Dawn, I think we're gonna do this with CES." And I was like, "What? That's insane." Well, of course, what that meant was um, in Las Vegas during CES, as you know, Danielle, prices are super high. Interdrone was always super generous with us. Not that CES wasn't. So don't take me wrong here. But Interdrone gave us literally a free luncheon, and we kind of had like our template on how this worked. Well, once it was like, okay, you're going to get this room. It's going to be for this amount of time. It was just like, oh wow, we kind of need a reception, and how do we fund that? So we were so lucky that Skydio stepped up and funded that entire reception. I mean, it was
Yeah.
not cheap. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So super thankful to Skydio. This past year, also, even before the CES thing was in the picture, we had done something we had never done before, which was have naming sponsors for those awards. So what we did was, we went out to different companies and said, "Will you basically sponsor the award?" And
Yeah.
for the first time, we were able to give micro grants to those women. That's something from my perspective. I got a nice trophy, but I started my business. It would have been great to have a $500 check to lay down on LegalZoom as I hit that button to create my LLC, because
Yeah.
that's about how much it costs. So it was important to me personally to have that micro grant. available. And, like, so we had Saber Wing step up for the Leadership Award, Iris Automation Entrepreneurship, Unmanned Safety Institute for the Education Award, and then Skydio for the Public Safety Public Service Award. Those were the individual awards. Then we had team awards where Volatus Aerospace did the innovation team sponsorship, and Fox Fury Lighting Solutions did it was essentially a Drones for Good award. I'm trying to think of the exact name. It was I think it was called the Spotlight Award. And then we added later this idea as we were thinking through it, this Diversity Exemplar Award, which we did not have a sponsor for. That kind of came out of Hyde, and that ultimately went to Airspace Link. But amazing companies, like, so the competition was insanely tight. I'm talking between a couple of points here and there. And so as I reflect back and I look at the people that won these awards, and Danielle, you mentioned people of color, women of color in particular. So you have Bronwyn Morgan,
Yes.
amazing entrepreneur,
I love her.
incredible role model, winning that Iris Automation Entrepreneurship Award. April Lannut from NASA
Yep.
won the USI Education Award. Let's see, we had two others. Leadership, Karen DeMayo from Aero DeMayo, that's Saber Wing Leadership, and Public Safety, Public Service Skydio was Madison Jeffrey. What a hoot she was.
What a hoot!
Oh my God. From Australia, like living out in Africa, just like sleeping on the ground, traveling hundreds of miles every day to make medical logistics a thing with drones out there, just doing amazing things. And then, of course, our team winners, Tony Drummond, as the CEO of Global Aerial Management Group for the Lattice Innovation Award, and USOG, U.S. Operations Group, Founce Janice,
Yes.
former Air Force, right, black male, former African American male, former airman. I think
I just want to throw in, I'm so sorry to interrupt, Dawn, but I want to throw in something about Fount. He is so interesting. He also is into NFTs, and we had a really interesting conversation about NFTs. And we're totally putting this clip in. I don't know if this was before or after you had already left the reception, but we're all kind of, leaving. You know how there was that stairway and the big piano.
Yeah.
Were you there when this happened?
No, I think he started playing the piano, I heard.
Yeah, so I recorded it. So we're walking out, right? After this amazing, mind-blowing event and all of these aerospace folks, all of a sudden, one of the CEOs sits down at the piano and starts jamming.
This is a man's
And it was, we're gonna put the clip in because I did record it. And it's like these people that you brought together. Can you talk a little bit about the keynote speakers who were there? I was just like, whoa.
Yeah, let me back up to
Okay.
because I was the ambassador for the program, and I put the sponsorship kind of portion of this together. Did a lot of the work through the year. I will tell you, once this kind of reverted, I'll say, to CES, Sharon, Desi Eckstein, Kimberly Penn, Wendy Erickson, let's see, Sam Scully, and I'm seeing her face, Grantology. Do you know the name? I'm not. Renee Jones Welsh.
Yes.
And I'm sure I'm missing, other really core people here. But as I think about like that, let's call it an ops team. I mean, it was like a finely tuned military operation on site with the amount of work that they did to make this thing happen. So, and of course, Desi's husband was involved as well. My husband Bill helped like set up
Oh,
the reception, I think,
yeah,
for a
I told
minute or two.
did your husband tell you what I said to him at the reception?
No.
You were on the panel when you were interviewing the people that won the grants,
Yep.
and so we're kind of in a crowd, and he was like, "Oh, hey." And I was like, "Oh, you look familiar, but I'm so sorry. How do I know you?" And he said, "I literally had just met him the day before, but he
You
looked
have.
different because I can't remember. I think he didn't have a hat on. He was like, "I'm Dawn's husband." I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But anyway, yeah, I was like, "How do I know you?"
That's he's
Continue.
probably in sweats, like you said, with a hat on. He cleans up
Yeah.
nicely and almost unrecognizably so, and I think that was the case for the party. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I just have to give a shout out because really at that kind of the final sprint, like that team, moved forward in such a significant way, and I basically showed up to MC, and I had Edge 2022 that I wound up doing at the end of the week, and I was spread a little bit thin looking back, but they did the heavy lift, and I don't want to take credit for pulling this team together. It really was Sharon and her leadership that did that, just to be absolutely clear on how that all played out. But to your question, Danielle, about our keynote speakers, so we had someone from the FAA that with COVID wasn't able to come, and at the 11th hour, Lori DeMatteis from Iris Automation, one of our sponsors, stepped up, and oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hui Tron, the director of aeronautics research for the NASA Ames Research Center, senior executive service in the federal government, amazing woman. She also was the other keynote. And I agree, Danielle. I mean, I sat there in absolute awe, like listening to these two women tell their stories and tell how they're trying to help diversity in Lori's case in Iris and through private industry, and then in Wee's Trace case through NASA and the federal government. Just incredible. And by the way, if y'all missed this, I actually did have this live streamed on Instagram Live. It's actually on it's dwelling on the P3 Tech Instagram page. You can find the entire ceremony.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I actually did find it, and I've watched it. I've shown it to a couple of people. I had to show it to my mom. I was fighting back tears of happiness and joy listening to Lori and Hui. I was just absolutely blown away by their stories.
I took that to me. That's how I want to be when I become a leader. I want to be nurtured. I want to support, and it's all of my worker, all the staff, but especially the women and those that are underrepresented. For me, as the director of aeronautics, I'm very involved in the hiring, the succession planning and training of our folks. And I make it to be something that I do it intentionally. And it has to be intention. And I do that because I keep at it. And it's going to take a long time to change the makeup of your workforce. I started this about 7 years ago, and now I just started to see the result of the intentional and stay on the task to change your workforce.
Questions and showing where technology is moving. Come back to the US. When I work in the software field, I see women. When I go into the industrial sector, I don't see women. In one of the industrial companies I worked for, there was a leadership meeting of 300 of us, the top 300 in the company, and there were 3 women vice presidents. Myself, I was the only one that was global. The 2 other women were back office, legal, and HR. Legal. Another company that I worked for that was industrial, 500 commercial leaders. There were 2 women in the room, myself and one other person. So, it's very interesting. So it goes up and down. So I come into the industry here and I'm thinking, oh great, this is going to be exciting. And that picture that was up there a second ago, excuse me, that picture was exactly me sitting, and I won't name the manufacturer, I think about 60 days ago. Everybody else had left the room. I was picking up my stuff, and I was like, I just was in another meeting where there were 15 men, and I was the only woman. We've got to change it. It doesn't matter whether it's men or women, or there wasn't the diversity. And that's what's so important. And that's what makes a change.
I love
Yeah.
that. Here's the other thing I'll say about both of them. Number one, we was on the Dawn of Drones podcast. I know, Danielle, you're aware that that's my podcast every Wednesday,
Mhm.
9 a.m. Mountain Time. And we and Kevin, the drone guy, Morris from the FAA, were my very last podcast of the year, broke all kinds of records, still getting views, and just incredible. So you can go to Drone Life TV and see that episode and hear her speak about diversity, because I did cover that in my podcast as well. Not the same information that she shared with us during the ceremony. The other thing I'll say is Lori is going to be on my podcast in
Ooh,
March.
okay.
So every March, I dedicate the entire month theme of my podcast to diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm really pleased to say that Iris Automation is sponsoring that month. And I'm pretty sure Lori, I don't know if John Damash is also going to be on with her, but I definitely want Lori to be that person talking about her story like she shared with us in that smaller group. And so stay tuned for that, I guess, is my point. And I have some other incredible guests coming on, like Rob Corbett. I don't know if you heard of Rob. He's a quadriplegic and former Air Force enlisted Office of Special Investigations investigator. And he is now like leading the charge for accessibility and diversity and inclusive flight. And I'm so thrilled to say that Rob is going to be on my podcast. Thanks to Volatus Aerospace, they're doing an above and beyond endowment series across my entire year of
Wow.
podcast every single
Very
month.
cool.
They are paying for other people and companies to be on my podcast
Wow.
philanthropically.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
and the majority of these companies are minority businesses, women owned, government employees. So super excited about that Volatus series and thankful for that. But I'll stop talking and let you ask me some more questions.
No, hey, this is all about you. This is your spotlight. But I just want to, thank you for. I can't talk to you without getting emotional. I've realized I can't be around you and not get emotional. Rob, this is so important because people sometimes think diversity. They're like, oh, good, we're talking about black and white. No, it's not black and white. There's so many pieces and intricacies that go into it. And I am very, very excited and grateful for Rob to be on your show. The work that you're doing, the work that Sharon's doing is so important. And so I just, again, please you said Rob will be on in March?
He'll be on in March.
Okay.
I have Jamar Williams from Promo Drone. I brought Jamar to Las Vegas, and he was on the big Lady Gaga stage with me during Edge 2022. As I build my content, and that's a lot of what I do now, like not only the writing I do, but of course my podcast and now event planning. I very deliberately try to include diversity in my thinking and in the people that I invite. If I did the math, is it still going to come out uneven? Yes, it is, because the industry is still uneven. It's like you said, Danielle, it's hard to find, let's just say women of color. Bronwyn is going to be a speaker at my event with AUBSI, my Law Tech event, Law Tech Connect workshop on Monday, April 25th in Orlando, Florida. So I have Bronwyn moderating one of our panels. I'm really excited about that. But as I think about, because it is Black History Month right now, it's February.
Yeah.
Props to Tony Reed from Drone Cadets in New York.
Yeah.
Every single day this month on LinkedIn, he is highlighting a Black African American, entrepreneur in the drone space.
Oh, cool.
And
Can you
Great.
tag me in that?
oh
I
god,
need to see
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Tony
thanks.
is amazing. He's doing great work with US Drone Soccer and drone cadets and all the stuff he's doing. But today he had Sharon on there. Actually, Sharon was the person he highlighted, and it was Doctor. She just got her PhD, LaQuata Sumter. She's another one that comes to mind. Uh, Hernanda White has created a not-for-profit called Black Girls Drone. I had her on my podcast last year.
I've seen that one.
Doing incredible stuff.
Yep.
So I'll definitely tag you on Tony's posts. I love what he's doing. I think it's really important. And we should celebrate, diversity in all its forms. And this is, Black History Month. And I think it's a great initiative that he is doing.
Mhm.
That's so exciting, and Chris, please feel free to jump in at any time, but I kind of fangirl Dawn. So if I don't mean to take over. You're my co-host, so if you have something you want to ask, you can.
Yeah,
I
I
have
just
so many things, but I'm gonna try to
Mhm.
chill out.
I just didn't want to interrupt. I mean, it was such a good, it's a great conversation. And you all were both at CES, and that was clearly, what I've heard from Danielle and Don. What you've just said, it's extremely important. And Danielle, you've spoken to Sharon and the other folks at Women in Drones, and like Don said, again, I mean, in terms of the work that you all have done, we wouldn't be able to do some of the things that we're doing. Like, you're laying
Yeah.
the foundation.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That is so, so important. If I could ask a question, though, I mean, one thing that I've had on my mind is, you said earlier that there's this eagerness, right, in this industry to change the industry, which, as you mentioned, is fantastic. And as someone with a lot of expertise in the area and a lot of experience in the area, what do you think are the first steps in moving the culture, right? Like changing the culture of our industry, if you had any that you wanted to highlight.
No, wow, that is such a significant question, Chris, because when you're talking about moving or changing culture, you're talking at the heart of it about leadership. I mean, really, and so, boy, so many books written on this topic. I mean, before I, punched out of federal service, I was actually the acting director and the deputy director once the director came in to the Air Force Academy Center for Character and Leadership Development. And that's what we focus on, is developing leaders of character. And how do you do that? Because it's the individuals that move culture, and it's at every level. Because people think, oh well, I'm not the nominal leader, I'm not
Yeah.
the head of the organization, but
Mm.
we all have a role, right, at every level. We are all leaders, and how do you make that cultural shift? It's one day at a time. It's actions, not words. But words matter too. That's
Yes.
the thing.
Mhm.
And it's, Chris, let's just start with the little things. I dare you to go to any drone company's website and pull up the images that are on there and tell me what you see.
Yeah.
I'm going to almost guarantee, other than Women in Drones,
Yep.
you're going to see a lot of white males. And again, there's nothing, this is not about like male bashing. I am married to a white male. I have 2 white male sons. Okay. Like, love them. And that's great. This is not my point. My point is, if you want to make change, like the little things, like how, what images are out there, how things are being projected, actually make a big difference to people. Because, and I, beautifully, April Lynott said this, from NASA. I interviewed all of these women for an article for Inside Unmanned Systems magazine that should be coming out here shortly, all the award winners from Women to Watch.
Mm-hmm.
And what she said was, look, Dawn, I grew up in a little town. I think it was called Mars, Pennsylvania. Ironically, Mars, Pennsylvania. She's like,
Yeah, that's cool.
accent. Um, and she said, growing up, you know, it was never a thing for like a girl to go into STEM. It wasn't something that was encouraged. It wasn't like, hey, here's an opportunity for you. But she just had a heart for it. And it was really over time, I think in college, that she really just started studying these things, and she's made it her life's mission now. Remember, she won the education award. She's made it her life's mission to give that message to kids that this is open to all of you. And as I think about NASA and what we said during her keynote, and talking to April, and even just that comic book they put out, NASA, it was a girl of color that was an astronaut, the first female astronaut to go to the moon. That is huge, because now a lot of little girls of color are going to see that book, see that comic, and they can see themselves there. They can maybe picture that, whereas maybe a different image wouldn't give them that vision and that hope or direction, that that's something that they too could achieve. And that's just a very small thing. I mean, culture, to move culture, especially when you're talking like an entire industry or an entire country, is like a Herculean effort. But like I said, it starts with the little tiny things. If we can chip away little by little, words, we talked about words. Okay. So FAA, giving them props and credit here.
Yes.
So they've taken this on board. They've got folks like Diana Robinson and Alina George, who, by the way, are also going to be on my podcast in March. So stay tuned for that. But the fact that they changed the acronym NOTAM, NOTAM, from Notice to Airmen to Notice to Air Missions, to be inclusive, was kind of a big deal. Like, and
yeah,
there were a lot of haters out there. A lot of people like, oh, this is so stupid. Why don't you focus on safety? Why are you? Well, like, the safety and the future of the industry is actually going to depend on all kinds of people getting into it, whether engineers, mechanics, you name the career field. There's plenty of opportunity for people, but we need all of them to feel welcome. And just something as simple as that can make a difference. And there's research behind this.
There's data.
There is data behind this. Data is something that sometimes people like to dismiss, and science, it's real. And
I got it. Can I jump in, Dawn? I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you said something that is so important to me, and that my mind's going a million miles a minute. In the aerospace aviation community, we love to brag about safety first. In my career as an aerospace engineer, I was sexually harassed and stalked and became unsafe. And the leadership couldn't do anything about it. I would say they tried, but within the bureaucracy, there wasn't much they could do, which eventually, had me leave the industry. But safety starts in the workplace. So if you don't have safety in your workforce and your workers aren't safe, forget about having a safe aircraft, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about political correctness. It's about listening to the data, and we're all scientists, we're following this information. So choosing to dismiss a certain, portion of data is honestly, it's ridiculous. And that's kind of what we hope to do with the Vertical Flight Society, where I've kind of stepped into that role. Kind of like Mike said on our last episode, he said, I heard myself say, I will do that. I decided I will be, I kind of used the, I guess the hurt and the pain from what happened to me in industry to, I was either going to leave industry or I was going to be the change. And Mike gave me that opportunity to be the change. And I'm so sorry that you didn't get to attend, because that was our bad for not communicating the correct time last week. but I just want to share in person what the experience was like, and that how much, all of our work is making a difference. 2 years ago at TVF, Transformative Vertical Flight, I didn't meet one woman. There were a couple scattered around, but I didn't meet them. This year we had our first ever diversity panel, and I went up there with my tattoos showing, with a t-shirt and leather pants and some big platform combat boots, because I wanted people to see I'm what aviation looks like. And I actually said this, am I only what aviation looks like? No, we're all what aviation looks like. And just because you don't fit into a certain box, that doesn't mean anything. And the conversation got heated, and I got lit, as my daughter would say, afterwards. I couldn't get from the panel to the elevator because I just kind of wanted to go back to my room and like process everything that happened. I couldn't get 5 feet without a woman, a person of color, even some gay. And I also said, 100% there are people in this room right now that are gay or transgender or lesbian that are in the closet because they don't feel comfortable in this space to be themselves. So
Yeah.
I'm up here in this t-shirt being my, crazy girl self because I want to create a space that's safe for you. Anyway, long story longer, as my dad would say, I couldn't get 5 feet without everybody grabbing me, every person grabbing me and telling me these emotional stories. And I
Wow.
actually had to go to my room and FaceTime my daughter. And I mean, I bawled my eyes out, tears of joy, that I was like, the whole saying, fake it till you make it. We're not faking it anymore. Like, I finally am starting to see the inertia moving, and that's all part of what you guys started. And I always say guys, but I
I'm
wish
from
y'all could have been
Philly
there
and
in
I do too,
person.
and you're right. It's like
Yeah.
I catch myself, look, habits are hard to break, and that's
Yeah, they
also part of
are.
culture too, right? And but just having that awareness of like, okay, I'm saying that, and maybe I'm offending some people, or maybe I shouldn't be using this terminology. But first of all, Danielle, I want to say I'm sorry that you experienced that, and thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that. I'm not going to stand here and tell you some of the stories of what I experienced during my time in the Air Force, especially early on,
Mhm.
or in a law firm when I was an intern, at the hands of a partner. So, like,
Mhm.
I get it. What you just said, gave me chills, like seriously, like, you know, everything you said is so important, and I am people have their views. I'm a huge fan of Lady Gaga. I love what she is doing,
Me
especially
too.
for the LGBTQ community that is so kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Misunderstood and marginalized, I think is a good word. And I'll tell you, my mom and I became like lifelong fans of her. We went to, on my 50th birthday, we went to, now I'm older than 50, so surprise. We went to her concert, and just the energy, the vibe, like, and we just went back in Vegas this past November, and she's very big advocate also for mental health and getting mental care, which in today's day and age, I'm sorry, with COVID, very significant. I've
Mhm.
seen it like in my own house. I've seen it like in my students because I'm a college teacher, professor. She said something that I love and I'd like to repeat. She just said, if you're going to get up in your own head, make sure you take someone with you.
Mm.
Well, this idea of, you know, look, we all need help. We all need a hand. Like, so you're not in this alone. And what you just said, Danielle, and the fact that you could be yourself up on that stage, that you could let other people know, like, it's okay to be authentic.
It
That's
was the
that's
scariest thing
an
I've ever
okay
done.
thing to be. And the fact that people responded to that and came to you and thanked you, I think it is really huge. So good on you. Good on you.
Thank you so much, Don. It literally was the scariest thing. I had no idea how people were gonna resonate with it,
Yeah,
and I was like, I might be ostracized from this industry after this. And the response, what it just blew me away. It
that's
just absolutely
awesome.
blew me away. And before we run out of time,
Yeah.
I want you to say it because We're definitely going to use it in one of our mini clips. Will you please say I guess the slogan of Women in Drones?
I don't know that it's the slogan, but I hear Sharon say all the time, if you can see me, you can be me. And it's one of those things that I feel like there's also a corollary for that, because that's just targeting girls and women, right? If you can see me, you can be me, right? In the
Yep.
case of me being a woman, and the fact that it's a women's kind of focused group. um my corollary to that, and I've said this before, is if you can see her, then they can be her. In
Ooh.
other words, getting outside of this identity group of women that and girls that, like, you can see this woman role model and you can be that woman role model. It's the boys, it's the questioning people, right? It's them that
Yeah.
need to also be able to see those strong role models, to appreciate that other people outside of their own little group can also be like that.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I just think that's so important. And that's why I've been a fan. I will be a lifelong fan of Sharon and Women in Drones, and of course now you, Danielle, and Vertical Flight Society and everything you're doing in this space. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. It's been a real pleasure.
So the mission of our podcast, we've had these first two were just introductory. The first one was Mike Hirschberg. This one is with you to talk about our partnership. But the next one will include somebody early on in their career in aviation,
Yep.
not necessarily a student, but somebody early on in their career in aviation, paired with an industry leader, and
That's
we'll put
awesome.
them together on the same podcast. And also they will be from underrepresented groups. We have some exciting people coming up, and you're going to see people from the transgender community, you're going to see people from the African American community, you're going to see all different types of women and men and everything in between. And we've got this roster of people lined up. What we don't have lined up are the industry leaders, and they say they want diversity. So any advice or thoughts on how we might attract them? And I kind of thought I'd maybe use this moment to say, hey, Jobin, Mark Moore, and some of the others, like, please come on our podcast, and would love your thoughts on that, Dawn, on how we can, because I believe people mean well and they want this, but how do we actually make it happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes, yeah, I think oftentimes the pen is a very mighty, tool. And I'll tell you, Mike Hirschberg's editorial that then went out in eVTOL Insights a little ways back, where he talked about the need for diversity in the industry, and the dire engineering shortage alone that's going to happen. 10,000 engineers, I think he said
Yeah,
before
per
the next
aircraft.
start. Perhaps a way you could do this is if, someone like Mike, puts out the call.
Mm,
And because you have so many incredible companies and leaders in Vertical Flight Society, my thinking is they're gonna want to get involved, and so that could be maybe a great approach that you can take.
perfect. And I don't know why we didn't just think of that, but that's literally the answer. All right, I think we've used all of your time. God, Don, I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
We're 100% going to sponsor a grant next year, so please let me know how I can sign up for that. And any last words from you, Chris?
Um, Incredible second episode. I don't think we could have picked a better guest with better things to say. Really, thank you so much, Don. We really appreciate having you on.
Well, thank you both. And if I could just have like 2 seconds to close
Take all
here.
the time you need,
Please.
honey.
I mean, what I really want to emphasize to everybody is that this is about all of us, right? This isn't, a women's issue. It's not an African American issue, LGBTQ issue. This is an industry issue, and we all have a role to play. I mean, Chris asked about culture. It's going to take every single one of us to change that, and I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to be a part of it, And once again, thanks so much for this opportunity to talk a little bit with you about diversity, equity, inclusion.
And thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Don.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Vertical Flight Society. To learn more about the flying taxi companies and available careers, go to vtol.org/DiversiFlite. Thanks so much for listening.